أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص. وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم لم تؤذونني وقد تعلمون أني رسول الله إليكم فلما زاغوا أزاغ الله قلوبهم والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. وإذ قال عيسى ابن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة وإذ قال عيسى ابن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعد اسمه أحمد. فلما جاءهم بالبينات قالوا هذا سحر مبين ومن أظلم ممن افترى على الله الكذب وهو يدعى إلى الإسلام والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. يريدون ليطفئوا نور الله بأفواههم والله متم نوره ولو كره الكافرون. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على دين كله ولو كره المشركون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا هل أدلكم على تجارة تنجيكم من عذاب أليم تؤمنون بالله ورسوله وتجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالكم وأنفسكم ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ويدخلكم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ومساكين طيبة في جنات عدن ذلك الفوز العظيم. وأخرى تحبونها نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا أنصار الله كما قال عيسى ابن مريم للحواريين من أنصاري إلى الله قال الحواريون نحن أنصار الله فآمنت طائفة من بني إسرائيل وكفرت طائفة فأيدنا الذين آمنوا على عدوهم فأصبحوا الظاهرين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters, and welcome to the Imam Hussein Islamic Center. As we commemorate the occasion of Dahwul Ardh, or the expanding of the earth. Just a few announcements before we begin. We do have a few programs upcoming. Keep your eye on our social media, and you will see them. The marriage of Imam Ali and Sayyidah Zahra Salamullahi alayha, the shahadat of Imam Jawad alayhi salam. We have Eid al-Adha, Ghadir, Mubahala, the birth of Imam Ali al-Hadi, insha'Allah. All of that follows into Muharram, insha'Allah. So if you keep your eye on our social media, you will see that, insha'Allah. Without wasting your time, just a few more quick announcements. We do have Dua Kumail every week, Dua Nutba every Friday morning, Salat al-Jum'ah, and occasionally we do have some youth outings. So if you if you are interested in any of these, they're all on our website, inshallah. Without wasting any more of your time, if I can ask that we recite 3 loud salawat as we invite Hajj Muhammad Naki and His Eminence Sheikh Muhammad Mahdi, and we will get the table talks underway, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to this live episode of IHIC Table Talks. It's been a while since we last done it. It's a pleasure to have you and be your host for the night with His Eminence Sheikh Muhammad as well. We're going to talk about a topic that is, I think, a very unique topic for us as Shia Muslims. You know, we're going to enlighten the audience, inshallah, both here and online. You know, just regarding the history of Dahwul Ardh, the concept behind it, what it means, and you know, how we can sort of make the most of this day. So, firstly, the actual introduction. I'd like to invite Sheikh to give us a quick intro to Dahwul Ardh and what it means for us, because what I did notice, Sheikh, is we don't really see like anyone else commemorate this day apart from Shias. Is this right? Is this a correct saying?
Yeah, you could say that it's not commemorated. Firstly, I should say Assalamu alaikum salam. And I'll just say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Yeah, what you're saying is correct. It's a Shia event, because this is one of 4 events in the year that, you know how we have things that are mustahab, like we might say this is makruh or that's mustahab, but some things we say are mustahab mu'akkad. For example, tasbih al-Zahra alayhi salam after prayer is mustahab mu'akkad, or qunut in salah is almost wajib, mustahab mu'akkad.
So that's like a higher level of mustahab?
It's mustahab, that means there's unanimity.
Got it.
Every marja says this. It's not one says it, it's
widely accepted.
It's known. You know,
Yeah.
It's not one where there is contention in the issue. When it comes to fasting, 4 days have no contention where there is istihbab. And those 4 days, the first one, if you want to look at it from the calendar perspective, if a lot of people, because they consider Muharram to be the first month, which it isn't, Shahr Ramadan is. Because in the narrations where it says Shawwal is the first month of the year where we do not fast, the narrations are very clear with this. The Shahr Ramadan is the first month of the year. But if you begin with that, the first event where we actually, it's recommended mu'akkad for you to fast is the day of Dahwul Ardh, the 25th of Dhul Qa'dah, which is tomorrow for us.
Yes.
Its actual date is tomorrow, the 25th of Dhul Qa'dah. And then after that is the 18th of Dhul Hijjah, which is the day of Ghadir. And it's unique because it's the only Eid where you fast.
Yeah.
Whereas Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr, it's forbidden to fast. And then the next day after that is the 17th of Rabi' al-Awwal, which is the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, and then the 27th of Rajab, which is the Mab'ath al-Nabawi Sharif, which if we want to go into detail into all of these, we can. But yeah, it's unique to us.
Yeah, and when we look at the actual the ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Nazi'at, you know, He says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, wal arda ba'da dhalika dahaha. As for the earth, He spread it out as well. Okay, so this actual concept of the earth spreading out, when we look at science and the scientific view of how the earth was created, we once again see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in just this one word, this one ayah, He's basically answered decades and maybe centuries of research in the scientific field with scientists who almost, you know, they deny the existence of God. You know, but they somehow came to the conclusion that once upon a time, the earth was covered with water. You know, it was and the formation of the earth 4 billion years ago, etc. And it's the emergence of land, right, that formed the tectonic plates, and you know, the continents were sort of formed from that. You know, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers it with this ayah. So how is it so advanced that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously He's the creator, but He was able to answer this, you know, and Islam is almost trumping the scientific view by 1400 years.
Well, firstly, we need to understand Islam is true and the veracity of Islam is never questioned. It's science that is ever evolving. Science is never the same. A lot of things that were believed to be true by scientists before are not so any longer, and they change. Things keep changing over time. For example, when they believed that like over 1,000 years ago, they used to believe that the eye used to emit light, and that's how we could see. And then they were challenged if that was so, then we would be able to see in the dark. So the amazing point here, besides of what you mentioned about the earth being completely covered in water, is that everything begins at a point. Like if it wasn't for Edward Hubble, the Hubble telescope, they wouldn't know, because they seeing that the universe is ever expanding.
Yes.
Then by the fact that it's ever expanding, if we go in reverse, it means the universe began at a point. Likewise with the earth. See, it's spreading out. He's telling you it began at one point. There was a point where it began, and from there it expanded. And this is how everything works. It's how things, even if you look at how everything moves around, if you see something, for example, a seed moves from one place to another, a mold moves around, everything starts at a point and then it expands. It just doesn't appear one go.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
this actually is talking about that first emergence of land.
Yes. Was at a point.
Yeah.
It began at one point, yeah.
And where was this point, Sheikh?
Well, Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, there's a lot of narrations. He says, "Inna awwala baytin wudi'a lin-nas lalladhi bi Bakkata mubaraka wa hudan lil-alamin." So he says, awwala baytin. If you look at some translators, for some reason I always mention this, if you're translating something, you're actually defining or not defining, sorry, you're giving the counterpart for the word in Arabic. So your job, if you see tree, you write shajara. You don't, or you see shajara, you write tree. You don't put in brackets pine tree. It didn't say shajara sanobar. It said shajara, so you write tree. That's it. So when it says, for example, inna awwala baytin, you'll see the people say the first house, and then in brackets, they write of worship. That's not what it says. The first place, the first house, was Bakka. Bakka, which is known as Mecca. And this place that Allah Azza wa Jal had made, this point, was the point for where the Kaaba would be built. Remember, it says Al-Qawa'ad min al-Bayt. The foundations were always there. Because at first, when Allah had made this specific point, that was the first point that was made. And from there, the earth spread out. But that point, there was always a place of worship that Allah elevated, because that was the first point. Everything begins with religion and it ends with religion. Everything has got to do, everything is linked to God. So when he raised this up to what became Bayt al-Ma'mur, where the angels do tawaf, then he got, many years later, he would get Ibrahim and his son Ismail to build the Kaaba at that point. But that's where it all began. And from there, what we say, وَالْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ ضَحَاهَا, or another verse in the Quran where it says, وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا جَلَّاهَا وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا طَحَاهَا. طَحَاهَا also means to spread. It's not with the طَحَاهَا, but it also means to spread out.
Yeah.
That there it expanded from there, from that single point, which was the oldest land on earth. That's why we call it Al-Bayt al-Atiq. Firstly, it's old, and it's also, the other amazing point, is the only point of the earth that never went under the deluge, never went under the flood of Noah. It's the only point on earth.
It's actually unique as well in that we pray 5 times a day towards the Kaaba,
yeah.
towards the source of life,
Yeah.
being able to exist on earth, it's a combination of land and water and
Yeah.
the whole atmosphere that, and we actually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to point to that place.
Yeah.
Because that's where essentially
that's where everything originated
from.
That's where it all began.
And it somehow does it symbolize that Allah is the originator
Yeah.
as well?
Badi'a as-samawat wal ard ahsan. Everything, yeah, he's the originator, and so you have to always go back to the roots. That's why, for example, when we were Aqiq was from that mountain in Yemen, the mountain that had the Aqiq in Yemen was the first mountain to testify in its belief in God and its belief in the Messenger of God and the walaya of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. So all of these things that have value is of a certain part that Allah Azza wa Jal has bestowed favor upon them and given them this position and status.
Yeah. So Sheikh, is it fair to say in the Holy Quran there are many types of miracles mentioned? There are scientific miracles, there are numerical miracles, there are historical miracles, right? Would you say that this concept, this Dahwul Ardh, is a type of scientific miracle?
Oh, definitely, but we still haven't taken it all. What I mean is, over time, because what makes the Quran, or one thing said Abu al-Qasim Khut used to say, one of the miracles of the Quran is no one's ever answered the challenge. Like, you think about it, we got AI today, we got all these, no one has made a book like the Quran.
Or even
no one's even bought something. And Sayyid al-Qasim Khut used to say that no one could bring up, even the way that they try, it's unique. It's a book like no other book. The other thing about the Quran, it's perpetual. It's always giving. There's no time where the Quran, and I'm not only talking in the next 1,000 years, I'm talking today. And I'll ask all of you, how often do you read the Quran and every time you'll read a verse and it's like the first time you've read it? Another time you'll be reading the Quran and it's like it's the first time you see it in that way. You always see something. And this is the way that the Quran gives, because the Quran is alive. It's a ruh. It's living. So the miracles in there, of course, innahu kitabun, he says, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, sadiqun musaddaq. That the Quran is sadiq musaddaq. You know what sadiq musaddaq means? That on the day of judgment, that the Quran, if it says a testimony, if it says this person used to read me, he is a mu'min, Allah does not listen to anyone else and says enter paradise. And if the Quran says this person neglected me and he did not look at me, Allah would not listen to anyone else and he would cast him to the fire of hell. This is the station of the Quran. So its ability and its position. How else would it be if Rasulullah says that I've left it and Ahl al-Bayt? So if you think Rasulullah, what we all wait for when we do dua is Imam Sahib al-Amr. This is the partner of the Imam. What's the Quran going to be like? We know the station of Ahl al-Bayt salawatullah alayhim. What we think we do. So imagine the station of Ahl al-Bayt and the station of the Quran. So the Quran always gives. And there's so many miracles. And you could go, we were kids, we used to read that book for Dr. Maurice Bucaille. You know, the Bible, the Quran, and science. And then the Muslims made a side book called The Science and the Quran and Science. But even the Bible, because its origin, there are things from God, so it has miraculous things in there. But the Quran is untampered. The Quran is the same book.
Correct.
And this is very important, because you've got a lot of people now that talk about tahrif.
Yes.
They tell the Quran's being tampered. And the biggest answer I always give people, when did the tahrif happen? They tell you after the Prophet died. I said, then why did it only stop then? Why didn't they do it again and again and again? You ever seen a book? There's the first edition, then there's the second, revised, third, fourth. So the Quran should have been so different by now. If you believe it's always been tampered with, why did it only get tampered with once? So did it become immune after that? No. If the Quran was tampered with, like they say it was, the people that claim, then it wouldn't have this. It wouldn't have this ability, it wouldn't have this strength, and the Imams wouldn't back it in every hadith. Alaykum bil Quran. You know what they ask Amir al-Mu'mineen? Man nas'al ba'dak. It's very important. I know it's a bit of a segue, but it's very important. They said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, who do we ask after you? He says to them, Alaykum bil Quran. Amir al-Mu'mineen say this. Why would he say this if the Quran was apparently tampered with just before? He would have said, listen, I would have said the Quran, but this book we got has been played with. And this is another evidence not tampered with. The fact it always shows miracles every day. It's giving, something comes out, it's already mentioned in the Quran. It's not some made up Nostradamus. It's not something Nostradamus said.
But there's also a very clear distinction between like Quranic ayat and non-ayat. You can easily distinguish between something that is not in the Quran versus something that is in the Quran.
Even the words of God,
yeah,
the hadith, we call them hadith Qudsi, and they're not the same as the Quran.
They sound different, yeah.
They sound different.
Yeah.
The Quran's just different, it's unique.
Very hard to replicate that style.
If God says you can't, the Prophet says, in kuntum fi raib. He says, there's a verse in the Quran, you have any doubt, mimma nazzalna ala abdina, you have any doubt of what we revealed, فَأْتُوا بِصُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ النَّاسِ. Get another surah like this. In kuntum sadiqin. Then he says, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا. If you do not do this. And then he says, وَلَن. So you will never be able to do this. So if God says, وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا, you're not going to be able to do this. So in other words, God wouldn't stand behind his product. 1400 years ago, later, it's going to be exposed. Like, with, I remember once Richard Dawkins, he said that Muhammad, he says, had some substance. He had to say this. He said, as for John Joseph Smith, the guy that came with the Book of Mormon, he said he was a charlatan. He was a straight-out liar. He was an imposter. Whereas with the Prophet, he couldn't. You can't say this because you look at it and you just, it's the substance. And that's like when I mention to Christians, I tell them, well, Jesus doesn't say there's no prophets after him. In fact, in the book of Matthew, in chapter 7, where he says, he gives you the litmus test. If someone comes after me, claiming to be from me, from God, from religion, he says, look at his fruit. If he's got good fruit, then he's good. So if you look at the Quran, there's no doubt that this is a prophet.
Yeah, correct.
This is according to the testimony in the gospel according to Matthew. It's there. So if the gospel according to Matthew was a true reflection of what Jesus said, then the fruit of Rasulullah is true, and every Christian has to become a Muslim. Yeah, if that's the case. And it is.
Yeah. All right, so we'll take a little segue into the first question. You're talking about the Bible, right? If we look at the Christian's view on the creation of earth and the heavens and the earth, okay, and where it was created in 7 days, okay, and then is it that God rested on the 8th day?
On the 7th.
On the 7th day.
Rested on the 7th.
Yeah.
So in 6 days and rested on the 7th.
So how is the Islamic perspective, and according to the Quran and the Hadith, different? How would you answer the Christian idea or their theory?
Look, in all honesty, I always believed that that's not what's meant in the Bible. Okay, because it's not in English. See, I probably the first version of the Bible I read was the King James version, because I used to sit with Protestants and Anglicans. That's where I did my Bible study with Anglicans, and I believe they did that an injustice, because when it says in the book of Genesis that the world was created in 6 days, I think it meant 6 periods of time, like as in we believe in. It didn't mean, because here's the problem. If we're going to say it's 6 days, as in days. Well, each day is calculated how? By the rotations of the earth on its axis. And the earth didn't exist. So how were you calculating the days? So it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So I think people said, see, this is how stupid it is. I said, no, this is how stupid the ones that were interpreting it were. Because they reject. See, when you turn away from your prophet, see, if you look at Ibn bin Baz, he says that the earth is flat. And anyone that doesn't say that the earth is flat is a kafir.
Flat earther.
Huh?
He's a flat earther, they call him.
Yeah, flat earth. I don't like to pathologize people. I've tried not to anymore.
That's what they call themselves, Sheikh.
Yeah, but I don't like to
You know what I mean?
pathologize because I'm sick of us being called terrorists and niggers and whatever they call us. Every single name they give us under the sun. I'm sick of following when they pathologize people, but for them, they're normal. You know, but everyone else
is whacked, right?
Yeah, so I don't like to. So these people that they look, honestly, I understand where they come from, because if I had to put up with the circus that we had during the vaccines and all the circuses what we put up with, all the lies you're told, you don't blame people for putting on a tinfoil hat. I really don't blame them. So anyway, so he says that the earth is flat. Okay? And if you don't believe this, you're an infidel. You're not mistaken, you're an infidel. You're kafir.
Yeah, you've left the fold.
That's it, you've left the folds of Islam. Now, why did they become like this? Because they left Ahl al-Bayt. You know, when this Jewish man comes up and he says, this is in Bihal Anwar, volume 10. It's a first narration. It's a first narration, volume 10, if you want to look it up. It's long, I don't want to. But these two Jewish men, and they say, listen, we heard there was a prophet here. And this links back to what we're saying. They said, we heard there's a prophet here. And they said, he passed. He said, all right, every prophet leaves a successor. Where's the successor of this prophet? So then they said, there's Abu Bakr, and they took them to Abu Bakr. So they sat down, and they said to him, where is your God? He said, he's up there sitting on his throne. He says, all right. They start asking him what is 1, what is 2, what is 3, what is 4. And Abu Bakr says, I don't need to answer all this, and he tells them to go. So they said, obviously, this prophet wasn't a real prophet. If he was, his successor would know how to answer the questions. So Salman al-Muhammadi, Radwanullahi alayh, grabs the two Jewish men by the hand, and he said, I will take you to the true successor. And they said, what do you mean by the true successor? Well, he said, after Musa, did people follow the true successor, Yusha, Joshua? And he said, no, they turned away from him. He said, likewise, this has happened here. So he took him to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and they asked, and they said, where is your God? And he said to them, tell me where he is not, and I will tell you he is. They said, in what direction does your God face? He said to Salman, light a fire. He said, in what direction does the fire face? They said, we don't know. He said, if you cannot understand the creation, in what direction it faces, how can you understand the creator? Then they said to him, where is a soul within a soul with no relation? You know, because if I said a soul within a soul, you say a mother and a child. He said, but there's no relation. Or what you want to say? Because, and we're getting to it right now, I'll explain it to you later. Because we commemorate this day because of its importance. And people neglect this, and we get this from Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. And this is what I was saying. So he said, what's a soul within a soul with no relation? He said to him, Jonah in the stomach of the whale. He was still alive in there, there's no relation. And then he said, what place has the sun touched once and never seen again? He says, the sea, when Moses split it, the sun saw it and it never saw it again. So it's along the way, it's so beautiful. He says, what's 1, what's 2? It's so long. And then they say to him, please explain what the Prophet looked like. They become engrossed in Rasulullah, and they weep, and Amir al-Mu'mineen weeps, and both of them take their shahada. One is martyred in the battle of Safin, the other one gets martyred in the battle of Nahrawan. Imagine this. Now, this is the problem with Christianity, because the Bible was tampered with. Remember the Bible, the Anglican Bible, the Catholic Bible is more. The Anglican Bible is made up of 66 books with over 40 authors. 40 authors that wrote this. You know, they through a process of God breathing, as I say, that God breathed it within them, and they wrote. However, these 40 authors that wrote this book, these books, these 66 books, the majority of them were penned by Paul of Tarsus. He was the one that wrote the majority of them. So these books that were written by these people that had nothing to do with Isa or Musa, Ibrahim, they weren't them. They were tampered with. Just as you see, like you pick up Sahih Bukhari, there are some hadith that are right, and then there's the hadith of some guys stoning a monkey and stuff like that. All these like out there hadith that exist, and you can tell where it's been tampered with. And that's the problem with the Bible. The Bible, because it has been tampered with and played with, and they want to make the story 1 + 1 = 2. You can't, you get a hadith. The hadith might not make sense. Why? Because you don't understand. For example, when they ask the Imam, what is Qaf? He says, it is a mountain that encompasses the earth. And it is what causes the greenness of the sky. And without it, he says the people of earth would die. Who's going to understand what that means? People sit there. Some people today said he was talking about the ozone layer. Okay? I don't know what he was talking about. But if I sit there and say, this hadith doesn't make sense, throw it out. No, you keep it, but you don't understand. See, what they used to do at the time where it didn't make sense to them, they get rid of it. And that's why they ended up with the mess that they have now. Because when you omit something, because you don't understand it, I'll say, just what our ulama, they will tell you today, late Dahwul Ardh, it's mustahab to do ziyarat Ali ibn Musa. That's what the ulama say from research. They say maybe because there's a hadith on the 23rd of the Qa'dah, Imam Ardh was martyred, one of the narrations. It's a weak narration, but they don't say it's false. Have you noticed? They'll say, Ruwaya da'ifa. They said Ruwaya is weak, but they will never say a Ruwaya is false. They say it's weak. Just put it aside. Because they don't dare. They don't dare when it comes to stuff like this. That if you come up to one of our maraja and say there is a hadith that the Imam, because you can't say the Imam said this, you never heard him. And also the person writing it down is not writing it word for word. It's not like the Quran. The Quran was written by Ali ibn Abi Talib. So sometimes you might be listening. You've seen PAs that they write shorthand. Sometimes the hadith is not, it's a ruwaya from the Imam. So according to the Imam, this ruwaya, the marja will never say, oh, this is for. No. When you say from the Imam, they freeze. They don't play around. This is not a time for you to play. They'll say, yeah, there's another narration that says this. And this one's not as strong, and there's more narrations that support this opinion. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is the problem. When it comes to the idea of the world being created in 6 days, and then God rested on the 7th. When we read Ayatul Kursi, what do we say? وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا. What does وَلَا يَؤُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا? That maintaining the samawat wal ard, the heavens and earth, does not belabor God. It doesn't tire him. It's effortless. You know, when we do something, we spend effort. It's effortless. It's nothing. You know, sometimes I might do something that's like when you breathe, your diaphragm's doing all the work. You're not doing anything. Until I told you now, you probably start. But your diaphragm's doing all the work when you breathe. But when God, it's effort. And everything is done. It's got no effort. It's like you.
Yeah.
No, but this is, astaghfirullah, I don't want to do any qiyas.
Yeah.
But there's no effort for God. Whereas they say he needed to rest.
Yeah.
He needed to rest. The same God that created this entire universe, and they could even be with hadith, a thing for the multiverse theory, even. You know what I mean? That there is a possibility there's other universes based on our hadith. Yeah.
Yes, there are. Thank you, Sheikh. So the second question is going back even further. So it's basically a question on the concept or the Dahwul Ardh in terms of the context of the theory of evolution. And how does it sort of fit into it? I think we answered it in the beginning when we were talking about science and how scientific ideas align with this concept that the earth was once covered with water and it's the first emergence of land, that basically set into motion the existence of the continents and land, etc. I think we answered that one. The next question, Sheikh, is, and I think we've touched on it a bit, but I think maybe we can elaborate a bit more. There is significance given to this day. Why is it so important? I have read, there was one article that quoted a hadith from Imam Ardh alayhi salam that says that Nabi Ibrahim
Was born.
and Nabi Isa as well were born on this day. And also it goes on to say that Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu Farajahu Sharif will reappear on this day.
One of many narrations.
One of many, yeah.
Yeah.
Amongst, yeah.
Some narrations say the 10th, some there's different
Yeah.
of Muharram. Yeah. It's got, but to let you know that this day is included. See, you got to remember, the first day when the earth was, when the point was made, the first day, no. The Quran, if it was to explain everything, it'd be a tome of what millions of volumes. It can't be like that. The Quran was written in a certain way where it gives you, as if we say like Rus Aqlam, which gives you points. And you need the Imam to explain some of the things. Some of the things are straightforward. Some of the things because if God gave you all to you, then you would have no need for the Imam. But you need the Imam so he can explain things. And you need the Imam because the Imam represents the Quran. So, for example, if I showed you a picture of something, a model of something, I'll tell you this is what this is going to look like. You say, all right. Okay. Sorry, I'll jump there. If I explain something to you, if I told you I'm going to take you somewhere or buy you something, and I explain it, you understand somewhat of what I'm speaking about. But if I show you a model of it, of what it looks like, then you go, oh, that's what you're talking about. You know what I mean? That sometimes the thought is, it's abstract, and it's not clear. You know what I mean? I don't get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, I want to explain a football move to you. If I said I did a rainbow flick, if you hadn't seen a rainbow flick, would you know what I'm talking about? You sit all day, you wouldn't even know. Then I'll show you what a rainbow flick is. Oh, that's a rainbow flick. I scored, with finesse, a finesse shot. Would you know what a finesse shot was without seeing it? No, you wouldn't. You'd have to see it. So do you understand what I'm trying to say? So the Quran will say things, and if I didn't see the actual Imam on how to act, I wouldn't understand these concepts. And if you didn't explain them to me, I wouldn't understand. So the Quran doesn't give you everything in one go. Do you get me? Good. What was the
question was around the significance of this day.
Oh.
And we said that it's narrated that Nabi Ibrahim and Nabi Isa alayhi salam, they're born on this day.
Okay. There's another thing that's very significant. When God created Mecca, that point where the Kaaba, it's only there where the Kaaba was going to be, it was created on Laylatul Qadr. On Laylatul Qadr. This is where the world started, and the earth that we live in started on Laylatul Qadr. And then it spread out on the day of the 25th of the Qadr. Why? Because there had to be a connection from the heavens to the earth. There has to always be a connection from the heavens to the earth. And that connection from the heavens to the earth is from Adam until the day of judgment. That day on Laylatul Qadr comes in where the earth and the heavens, where the wahi comes down onto whoever's here. So that as that connection from there, that's the importance of that. I'm linking back to the origin, the source of where everything came from for us. But otherwise, like, that wasn't the beginning. This is the thing people don't understand. That wasn't the beginning. We're in the last chapter.
Yeah.
We're in the last part of the last chapter. That's where we are.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
It's actually quite intriguing that the Sunnis don't acknowledge this day. They don't believe in.
They're too busy celebrating the 10th of Muharram.
Yeah, correct. I was actually going to say
serious.
that. Yeah, it's like they've given, like, this day. When you think about the importance and the weight that it carries in the history of mankind, and such an important day, but it looks like they've moved that to a different date for other reasons.
Well, Yani, today you see it.
Yeah.
Today, for example, Israel's takeover of Syria, they celebrated it. They actually celebrated, and the dead silence when the new leader of Syria was giving bay'ah to Trump, the dead silence over that.
The servant met his master, Sheikh.
That's right, the servant met his master, Hassan. Yeah. Now, if you take a look, this is the way the world is today. It shows you what it was like. If you look even, for example, when all the, up till today, there's that massive Holocaust taking place in Gaza, the massacres taking place in all, and the whole world's witness and the whole world's complicit. And the saddest thing is even the Sunni leadership's complicit. No one's got up. Mufti Bank, they make jokes all the time. Last year had iftar with these Zionists. They killed these people. And the reason I'm naming him, because a lot of people watch him and think he's a good bloke.
Correct, yeah.
They're not. They're all Zionists. And you could see the position, you see the celebrations in Greenacre they had, pro-Zionists.
Correct.
They celebrate all these things. We never, see, the thing is a lot of people don't understand, we as Muslims never supported the Assad regime. This is very important I mention this. I know I don't want to get too political, but it's very important. We never supported it, but he was the lesser of the two evils in the case. And even when Saddam, for those that don't remember, when America was going to invade Iraq, Sayyid Hassan, rahmatullah alayhi, at the time said what? He said, we should not stand with the Americans. And everyone said he's supporting Saddam. He wasn't supporting Saddam, nor was he supporting Bashar, but it's the lesser of the two evils. Saddam was the lesser of the two evils. Bashar was the lesser of the two evils. But these people blatantly are supporting this regime. It's very important I mention this so you can understand why they don't care about Dahwul Ardh. They're more interested in giving out sweets when our commanders have been killed. They're more interested in giving sweets when Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam was killed. You got to understand that. See, if you look at the hadith, because I want to mention the 10th of Muharram, did you know why the Imam Ardh alayhi salam says to Rayyan ibn Shabib, he says, فَإِنَّهُ ذُبِحَ, that he was slaughtered, about Imam Hussein, like a sheep is slaughtered. There's a reason why he said this. Because when a sheep is slaughtered, like for example, if someone was to kill a cat or a dog right now, the RSPCA will go crazy. Someone was to slaughter, they wouldn't say a thing. Everyone will go crazy. But if someone was to kill a sheep or a cow, no one cares. Because that's, as the saying says, it's a lamb for the slaughter. That's what they're there to be killed. So when he was slaughtered, no one cared. Secondly, when you slaughter a sheep, it's a day of Eid. You do it on Hajj. You do it when people come from Safar. We do it, and we slaughter sheep on weddings. So people are happy. Another reason is the time they were doing it, everyone was beating their drums and celebrating when he was. Furthermore, on top, this is very difficult for me to say this. Furthermore, on top of all this, when the sheep is slaughtered, everyone takes a piece of the sheep. And Imam Hussein, everything was taken from him this day. And Imam, when he says the ziyarah, إِنَّ هَذَا الْيَوْمِ in this year. فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين. And up till today they celebrate it. Up till today it's a day of Eid. People get married. People celebrate the day of the martyrdom of Abdullah al-Hussein. And days like this, they're not considered. This is what happens when you turn from the door of the city of knowledge. You turn from the Ahl al-Bayt, you end up in this position.
That's why somehow you can almost see the political sphere of the world today, the arena. You know, like when we look at what's happening now, and just like last week, Trump was given the purple carpet in Saudi Arabia.
And we get killed. We get killed trying to get a visa.
They made a $600 billion deal, and Qatar gave him a new luxury plane. You know, it's like they've completely left the essence of Islam in its true essence. You know what I mean?
But that's the Islam of Banu Umayyah.
Yeah.
The Islam of Ahl al-Bayt, I once said this when I was going to the UK in early 2000s. And he asked me, what's the difference between you and them, the other team? I said, the difference is they will slaughter children. I said, and we give our children. That's the difference. We give our children. Our children you raise, see, they raise them from the youth ready to defend Islam. Whereas the other ones, they target and they slaughter. If you saw in Syria when they were slaughtering the children, they were threatening the children, it's obvious. You'll never see this from the believers, the followers of Ahl al-Bayt. You'll never see a video of someone with a sword coming in and saying, I want to cut people's heads off. When your whole life have you seen this? A follower of Ahl al-Bayt enter a village and start slaughtering children. But these Banu Umayyah love children, they're like this. They come out and that's how they are. You know, they're Satan's seed. They come in and they just want to slaughter people. And that's all. And then, except they do this, they slaughter. And then when these Western overlords come in, they pay homage. Literally pay homage.
Literally. Sheikh, so back to the significance of this day. We've spoken about the scientific element. We've spoken about the Christian element. We've spoken about some of the the importance of this day in terms of Islam. But in terms of the rituals on this day, many of the days in the calendar, the Ayyamullah, they have certain actions that we should be doing, certain things that we can benefit on this day. What are some of the recommended acts, mustahab acts, to perform on this day?
There are a lot of things mentioned by Sheikh Abbas al-Qummi in Mafatih al-Jinan, they're present. But two things that are really stand out. Number one is the fasting. Tomorrow, it's really recommended to fast tomorrow. That the narration says if you fast on the day of Dahwul Ardh, it's like fasting 60 months, which is divided by 12 is 5 years. So it's as if you fasted for 5 years, and we got it good. Like right now, what Saftar is about 5:15, if that. If you go to school, on Saturday you won't be going to school. But anyway, you can have your sahur if you want. It's a good 12-hour fast.
Not bad, yeah.
Not bad,
Good one, yeah.
So that's the first thing. The other thing, as I mentioned, Ziyarat Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam, that they're the two main things. Other than that, you are told to do the extra mile. So if I already do, like for example, when I pray, I do adhan, iqamah, tasbih, zara, dua. Let me read, say for example, half a juz of Quran, if not or a juz, Let me do something that I don't usually do. Rather than do a little bit of, Salat al-Layl, you might just pray a witr. Say tonight I'm going to do all 11 rakat, for example. Or if I don't pray Salat al-Layl, let me pray Salat al-Layl that night. Just for especially for this specific night. You know what I mean?
It's like paying
so
respect.
To do extra, pay respect to that night. But there is a mention, but Sheikh Abbas will mention. But these are two of the main ones I've heard. And I don't like to go through, I just like to look at which ones pay the most, which ones have the most reward. I always look for, in any action, I look for which one really gives. And generally, any time.
High returns, right, Sheikh?
High returns, definitely. If you look, one of the books, the brothers was, I think, were you one of the ones involved with the Ziyarat Ashura book? Or was it
No, that's
Hajj Muhammad Ali?
yeah.
Yeah, God bless these guys that they're really promoting this Ziyarat Ashura. Anytime you read it, it changes your life. Ziyarat, if you don't want to do Ziyarat Ashura, Ziyarat al-Hussein, Assalamu alaikum Abu Abdullah every day. But if you read Ziyarat Ashura every day, and any form of ziyarah, but especially ziyarat Ali ibn Musa Ridha. Just to read ziyarah of Ali ibn Musa Ridha, there's short, there's long ziyarah, and they're all present in Mafatih al-Janan. You'll find them there. They're the main two out of the Amal. But if you want to, if I could open the book and go through it, but it's you'll find them in there.
Yeah, so we should really try and make the most of it,
The thing is, if you do Amal, you could either do Amal tonight. If you're not really into it tonight, then do it tomorrow in the day while you're fasting. Do Amal, because you don't want to do anything silly while you're fasting, for those that will fast.
All right, Sheikh. That was all the questions that I have. Are there any questions from the audience?
Allah, we don't not believe in evolution. We believe there is evolution, but not the evolution that they say. Because Charles Darwin, the one that says evolution, because I want to try and be as basic as I can, that believes in this, there's no evidence that is clear for what he says. Scientists before, in the old days, they used to follow only what could be proven at all times. Do you understand? When you're not at school, when you do an experiment, how do you do it? What year are you in? Do you do scientific experiments yet? Year 7 you start. Do you do aim, method, conclusion yet or not? Year 5, what school do you go to? Huh? And they do that. They do, all right. So sometimes I want to know something. For example, aim, I want to know if graphite can conduct electricity. Okay? So I hold a piece of graphite and stick it into an electric socket. No, I'm joking. So
Don't try this at home.
don't do that. So I get, the reason I said that because graphite is not a metal. That's why it's a carbon compound. So if I got graphite and I attach it to, I do the method, and then say, for example, the end of graphite, I put the copper wire from one end. I'm saying you don't do this. I'm saying, say that's the experiment. And I'll find it does have an electrical feed. So my conclusion is that graphite conducts electricity. Can it be proven? Yes, all the time. I can always do it and be proven. But Darwinian evolution cannot be proven at all times. It is a theory that I want to try and be, if you ever look into it, you will find that they look at 7 different forms of evidence, and it's like a jigsaw, and they just link them. For example, they look at embryology. Embryology studies what the baby looks inside the mummy's tummy. So I want to try me. So they look at, I'll give this one example. They look at the way it's morphed, the way it's morphing and changing. It looks very similar to other mammals in the ocean, like the dolphin and the whale, So then they try and find the link that we are all similar. Obviously, we're all similar in the fact we have eyes and all this, because we were made by the same manufacturer, same maker, which is God. So they say that shows similarity. Another thing that they use is fossils. You know what I mean? So with fossils, they find things that are, like, for example, we're going to be here all day, but for example, if I find a mammal.
Science class, Sheikh.
Huh? So if I find a fossil of a mammal from, well, I must ask him. Well done. All right. So from a million, say from millions of years ago, because we're not talking million, we're talking hundreds of millions of years as a mammal. Remember, we're assuming that it's a mammal too. Because all your life, what do dinosaurs look like? What do dinosaurs look like? Lizards, isn't that right? They look like lizards. But a lot of scientists don't believe they're lizards, they believe they're birds. Did you know that? So you look at Tyrannosaurus Rex, it looks awesome when you're watching Jurassic Park, the movie. But Tyrannosaurus Rex could be just one big bird. Could be like that bird in Up, the movie. Do you know what I mean?
Could be a big cockatoo.
Yeah, like a big cockatoo. That's what I'm saying. So we don't know if it's a mammal, but let's say it is a mammal. They find the fossil of the mammal next to the fossil of the fuel of the fish, and using their system of carbon dating, which is not accurate. So that's what I'm saying. I'm giving you all this. They state that these two died at the same era, and because it was next to a fish, they assumed that this mammal was swimming. So it was amphibious. That means, what's amphibious? Who knows? Name me an amphibious animal. Turtle, good boy. So an amphibious animal is the one that can live on land and in water. So they say this animal's amphibious, so they say this is when the mammals move from the land into the water. But they're assuming this based on fossils. Then they've got DNA, another system, where they look the difference between our DNA and the monkeys, the difference between our DNA and the pigs. And one of the best examples they use is the whale and the hippopotamus. Their DNA is very similar. Okay? So how is it that they're similar? They say they both have a common ancestor. So they use all these. There's a lot more. There's bone structure as well. But all these evidence, which we would call circumstantial in criminology, like we're talking about crime, if I got a bit of evidence from here, a bit of evidence from there, it doesn't mean something happened. It doesn't mean what you're saying is true. It has to be 100%, because a lot of things might show something, especially if I've got an argument, and if I want to prove something, like for example, your parents say, who ate the cookies from the cookie jar? Who stole the cookies from the cookie jar? And you say, my sibling. One good one I'll give you. You wet the bed when you were a kid. Okay? This is a good one. So what you do is your sibling's younger and can't speak as good as you, can't articulate himself. So you rub him into the wee and you put him there and you get up and wash yourself, and then he gets in trouble for wetting the bed. Now, if he sighs and gets himself out of it, they'll say, look at you. You're covered in wee. You're in the wet spot. You know, you smell like wee. So who did it? He did it. They can't prove it. So it just goes, I'm just trying to give you an idea. So this is the way that they go with, and it's single evidence. They need to be able to prove it, and it can always be proven. That's why we don't follow Darwinian evolution. I hope I tried to make it as simple as I can. Did I answer you at all?
That makes sense.
Did it make sense? So it has to be 100%.
Yeah, like
Can't be like that.
Come up here and explain it to everyone.
Haram.
So one more point on the theory of evolution, yeah? So as the Sheikh said, firstly, it's just a theory, okay? They can't actually prove it, okay? The second thing is that when you look at, there's actually one theological argument. It's called the teleological, right, argument. And this states that the universe was created with design and order, okay? And the theory of evolution can't actually address this concept. That how is there such intricate design and intricate order in all of creation that it just came up by chance? Nothing happens by chance, okay? And it was just like a fluke. The universe is a fluke. Humans are a fluke. It's like mathematically, it's impossible. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Before we wrap up the table talks, anyone? Takers? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you. Conclude with Dua al-Faraj. I'm going to recite it. Sheikh, do you want to read it?
Do you want to read it, Sayyid Zain? Read Dua al-Faraj? All right. Okay. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم قل لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين، والأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والأرواح موتانا جميعا، ولقضاء الحوائج وقبول الأعمال، شفاء المرضى وغفران الذنوب وتعجيل الفرج وحسن العاقبة. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.